As I witness the technological boom that is happening, all of the geopolitical crisis, my own inner process, shadow work, shadow figures coming to the light, and the inflation of global narcissism from leaders, I couldn't help but to think how all of this connects to our own internal process. I believe that everything that goes on outside of ourselves is showing us something within ourselves. Is the microcosm, macrocosm polarity of whatever we're witnessing has some inner thread within ourselves. And in this contemplation, I decided to write a piece just to help myself connect all the dots of everything that I have been witnessing, and also work through some things that I found were enraging me about the way that the world is at a bigger level. So I wanted to share this, and I named this piece The Consciousness Gap: Artificial Intelligence versus Organic Wisdom. We're at the edge of one of the greatest revolutions in human history. Right after the creation and commercialization of the internet, we're now looking at the second wave of massive growth at a planetary level. The internet's defining marker was global interconnectedness. It allowed us to get a broader perspective and step outside of the local bubbles that we live in. Artificial intelligence is now doing something similar, and yet, as this technology emerges and advances, so do an increasing number of ethical, humanitarian, and ecological concerns. These are not simple coincidences, as I do not believe in coincidences. For me, they are manifestations of the same energy coming to the surface to be witnessed and processed. This conversation is not about technology. This is about the shadow that we collectively refuse to look at. And I suspect that I'm not the only one who feels that something is deeply wrong beneath the story of progress that we keep telling ourselves. The illusion of freedom. We are all under the illusion that we have progressed, that we have eradicated most of the barbarian behaviors of the past in most parts of the world, that the atrocities of the past are behind us, and that as technology advances, we advance with it. This is a massive collective illusion. We are not progressing. What's really happening is that things are speeding up. Artificial intelligence is accelerating the illusion of progress, and in doing so, it is also forcing us to confront the collective shadows of humanity and its collective creativity at the same time. If we look at the history of growth in the world at a foundational level, we encounter one of the first monsters: slavery. Slavery is the foundation of extraction. It is building something great and magnificent using other people's labor, effort, resources, or lives so that an individual or group can manifest their vision without having to experience the labor and the pain of creation itself, with no real benefit to the actual creators of this vision. One may argue that slavery has been eradicated, at least in the global north, that we are free agents. It is obvious, however, that the global south, the exploited lands, is still experiencing slavery. And even if people are not called slaves, paying someone less than $1 per day is slavery, because this is not payment, it is literal exploitation. To understand any system, you have to ask, who benefits from this system? If we ask who benefits from slavery, the answer is the top of the pyramid, those who extract the labor, intelligence, resources, and production value from others. Who is at the top of the pyramid? Understanding this makes it clear that we have not eradicated slavery. It simply changed forms. The powers that run this world are not getting any weaker as we create more consumer freedoms. They're actually getting stronger, and they are morphing to become less detectable. Because what cannot be perceived can continue operating in the shadows. These hidden structures have become more sophisticated, and they will continue to become even more undetectable as we advance technologically. If we do not also advance ethically and consciously, We are heading for self-destruction. I'm not talking about doomsday destruction. I'm talking about a deterioration in consciousness. And this is also not a morbid essay. This is bringing attention to a problem where we have the full power to turn it around. The first step is to name things as they are, because naming is the first act of identification. Cheap labor does not exist. Sophisticated systemic slavery does. So for as long as we participate in this system without awareness, through consumption, the distance between action and consequence gets wider. Removing our consent to the system begins with consciousness. You don't have to live fully off the grid because a little awareness goes a long way. The key here is bringing awareness into the systems that we touch, whether we are the beneficiaries of the system or the exploited ones, two sides of the same coin. And the first step is awareness on either side, even when it is uncomfortable. Modern slavery is systemic, psychological, and normalized. You might think that the enslaved ones are the only ones being exploited, but if we look deeper, every single person is in some way a slave. And this is the illusion of freedom. We are not free yet. But if we acknowledge this illusion, we have the first real opportunity for genuine freedom. Spiritual, conscious, mental, and material freedom. It starts within. The myth of cheap labor. The concept of cheap labor can be the most exhilarating phrase or the most insulting phrase, depending on which side of the equation you are on. If you're consuming so-called cheap labor, you see it as a win, a market opportunity to grow, expand, and capitalize. You may see yourself as an entrepreneur offering goods or services at a surplus while paying a fraction of the actual cost. But you're not a bridge between product and consumer. In plain terms, you are the owner of a labor farm. Human labor is life force in motion. Our time on this earth is limited, which makes it a non-renewable resource. The body, the nervous system, and the emotional self all pay a cost. And this is why somatic work matters in healing and why somatic healing happens through stillness, introspection, and reconnection with the body. If we continue treating labor as something that can be cheap, we are unknowingly degrading the human experience. We are saying that my time on this earth is worth more than my fellow humans' time. And who decides that? In the current system, the answer is rooted in the belief that whiteness, privilege, and belonging to the economies of the global north grant a higher priority of life, health, and freedom than those born in the global south. Many people are aware of this, and yet the response is, it is what it is. This is how the system works. But until we fully confront this reality, we won't have enough mental spaciousness to even ask whether a different system is possible. One where this inequality and exploitation no longer exist. If you continue believing that this is the only system that works, you will continue living in the reality where that is true and co-creating it. Every single human life is valuable and sacred. Therefore, labor cannot be cheap because labor is human life force in motion, and that is sacred. This conversation connects to the global systems of displacement, supply chains, migrant labor, economic coercion, all dressed up as choice. The choices someone at the top of the pyramid has are very different from the choices of someone born at the bottom. Access to basic healthcare, food, water, and education are human rights. Yet we live in a system that removes those rights and demands labor and exploitation in exchange for mere survival. You know in your body, in your gut, that this is not right. Your body recognizes it. That's why these conversations are so uncomfortable. So why do we still accept it at a subconscious level? There is an incessant drive toward the future without ever stopping to look at the past. We cannot understand the human condition without understanding human history. Not the history taught in schools, but ancestral continuity. The burdens and stories that our ancestors lived on whatever side of the equation they stood, are for us to uncover. Exploitation did not begin now. Generational trauma is embedded in the labor system and will carry inherited survival patterns in the body. Ignoring this reality is an actual privilege. Comfort is insulation from reality, and reality is far more complex than we can imagine. For every ounce of wealth and expenditure in the current system, there is an equal and opposite cost. And the question is simply who gets to not see it. For some people in the world, there's no choice because that is their daily lived reality until the day that they die. The body knows what the mind has been trained to deny, and being able to be ignorant is a luxury that only a few of us have. The architecture of extraction. Exploitation is not accidental. It is part of the structure. Extraction did not begin with the Industrial Revolution. It began from the very start of our known history. An emphasis on known, because we only know what we are allowed to know by the system. Extraction moved from land to labor to data. And it's always taken without regeneration, without equal exchange. If our bodies recognize this as injustice, then why have we collectively accepted it? We accepted it because we are all under a collective spell, and the primary spell is the illusion of separation. The foundational separations are human versus nature, human versus God, the producer versus the consumer, the self versus the other, and the list goes on. For as long as we maintain this sense of separation from nature and from our fellow humans, the system will continue. The system feeds off of this illusion. Truth is what begins to break down the wheel. In order to free ourselves, the first step is to address the collective shadow. The collective shadow is not necessarily evil. It points at the things that we are unconscious of, the things that we refuse to see or just don't want to see. To look at this shadow material, we have to look at the atrocities that we as a species have done to ourselves and to our environment. This process is deeply uncomfortable. The natural human response is to run from it, to project it outward onto the other, rather than acknowledge the part that we each play. The collective shadow of this system includes denial, justification, outsourcing responsibility to governments, corporations, people in power, believing that because something feels good or useful, it cannot be harmful, and many more. When we take personal responsibility for our own shadow, we become equipped to face the collective one as well. We understand that we all play a role in perpetuating the system that enslaves all of us. This is particularly confrontational because it forces us to look at the reward structures that keep us feeding the system. Even within slavery, there is a hierarchy. If you have someone else to exploit, the burden on you is reduced. This is how the system persists. And today that manifests as profit, status, or simply the perceived safety of distance from the uglier parts of life. This message is not only for the victims of the system, it is for the beneficiaries as well. And most of us reading this are both to some degree. The internal moral narratives that keep complicity comfortable include, I'm creating jobs, this is just how the system works, there's no other way, I don't want to be exploited myself. These narratives and stories allow us to continue sleeping. But the more morally inclined you are, the harder it becomes to look away from what we are all participating in. You don't have to change it, but I'm simply inviting you to witness it. The final and foundational layer of the architectural structure is the earth itself. Ecological destruction is the direct mirror of human exploitation. Nature gets treated as a resource rather than a living system that we all belong to. If we can justify destroying our planet because we have cognitively separated ourselves from it, then we can also justify exploiting other humans. because the perceived separation between other and self follows the same logic. We can honor both individuation and separateness, which are equally sacred, while also respecting otherness. That capacity is developed through compassion, and compassion can only be developed through witnessing and recognition of human suffering. AI and the next phase of invisible slavery. We now find ourselves at a fascinating and dangerous juncture. There is a polarizing story about artificial intelligence. It will either free us or destroy us. The truth, as with everything, is somewhere in the middle. There are people who despise AI for its ethical and ecological implications, and people who are captivated by it as an extension of human creativity. Both responses contain some truth to it. There's a historical pattern in which technology concentrates power rather than distributing it, and AI is no exception. Some entrepreneurs see it as a path to independence, a way to build something for themselves outside the enslaving system. That can be true to a degree. But there are also organizations that see AI as freedom from having to deal with humans at all, because what drives them is profit at the lowest possible cost. And the people who own this technology don't particularly care whether you love it or you hate it. They will simply make you feel that adoption is inevitable, that either you get on board or fall behind. The real problem with AI is not AI. The problem is our collective consciousness. We continue approaching technology through the lens of extraction. It began with human labor, moved to the earth, and now it reaches data, creativity, energy, infrastructure, and attention. The same logic in a new medium. AI is currently centralized, just like most of the internet and social media. Power remains at the top of the pyramid that uses humanity as vehicles for both profit and consumption. So the shift will not come from AI or technology itself. It will come from decentralization. For as long as AI belongs to a handful of companies or individuals, we will stay locked in the same cycle of extraction that we have witnessed throughout human history. There's also a hidden material cost to AI that is rarely spoken about directly. And that is the environmental impact, the energy, the water, the infrastructure. This will affect all of us, except for those controlling the technology. They will have enough resources to insulate themselves from a decaying world. It is very important for entrepreneurs and innovators who see AI as a tool to understand the invisible labor behind automation, because nothing in this reality is costless. The energy must come from somewhere. The water comes from somewhere. And it disproportionately comes from marginalized communities. Whoever owns the system controls the output. The output becomes the new rent. And this persists because of a consciousness gap. Technology is evolving faster than human ethics. Intelligence is not the same as wisdom. Intelligence is something that AI can offer. But wisdom comes from the human contemplative capacity, from learning through experience, integrating our humanness, our compassion, and our hearts into what we have understood with our minds. We can move very quickly, but if we have no direction, it is not progress. It's just a path towards self-destruction. And creation cannot really happen without destruction. This is a principle of life. For life as we know it cannot exist without death. But leading the planet into an early destruction is the result of ignoring this law of polarity. We are producing unconscious harm at a massive scale. And this is the collective shadow made technological. This is not an argument against technology. It is an argument against human consciousness. Every tool humanity has ever built has reflected the level of awareness its creators brought to it. The question has never been what we can build. It has always been who we are when we build it. And who owns it. That's capitalism. From extraction to regeneration. I want to be very clear at this point. This is not about the end of the world. but it is the end of unconscious participation. The time where we could comfortably ignore the realities of the world and look the other way is over. This is an invitation to take radical responsibility, not with guilt or shame, but with a clear-eyed awareness of what you consume, what you create, and what you choose not to see or ignore. Making the distinction between these is the difference between either punishing yourself or having a genuine awakening. So we need to reconnect with reality because we have gotten way too comfortable getting everything in a few clicks. We need to somehow understand again what things actually cost, the true cost of labor, of materials, and of ecological impact. We have to stop letting reality be buffered by distance. Let's consider this. If your chair broke right now, what if instead of immediately ordering another one online, you made one yourself? All the information exists to learn how. You probably have a store where you can get the materials. What would that process do to your sense of what that chair is actually worth? What would you feel if someone then offered you $19.99 for it after you spend weeks building it, pointing to an online price and saying that's the value? This is the kind of awakening that we need. And even in a silly little example, it portrays the point perfectly, which is we need to relearn effort through making things so that we can respect labor, respect production, respect the time that it takes to grow a damn vegetable. Respect comes through direct experience, and the body as witness becomes the site of regeneration, the human body, the animal body. This is deep inner work. We have to do shadow work and integrate with it. There's darkness in the world, really, really ugly darkness. And there is an equivalent darkness within each of us. Things that we have chosen to ignore. Healing our ancestral lineage is part of this process. We have to trace the inherited survival patterns and the inherited complicity back to the roots. We have to move from unconscious repetition of what our ancestors did to one another into conscious choice. The vision I keep returning to is called Solarpunk. For me, Solarpunk is the forward-facing heart of this entire conversation. It's the happy middle. It's my fantasy, it's my dream that I am hopefully co-creating with all of you. And Solarpunk uses technology as a tool of regeneration, not extraction like the current system. It emphasizes decentralized power. It is community-rooted, technologically integrated, and consciousness-led. This is not an utopia or a fantasy because it is the deliberate practice of building systems that reflect the interconnection that we have spent thousands of years denying. And at the roots of this is indigenous wisdom. Solarpunk carries the political imagination of a world that remembers what it actually is. It brings life to the center of the circle, and it destroys the pyramid. Like I mentioned, Solarpunk can only work if it's rooted in indigenous principles, not in a beautiful aesthetic. For this reality to come into being, it starts with imagination. Vision always comes before reality, and we are always building the future, consciously or not. The media feeds us these dystopian stories that technology has taken over, that humans are irrelevant, that resisting is futile, and I personally refuse to accept that program. I do not consent. I invite you to refuse it too. Imagine instead a world where life is at the center, where we are capable of uniting to build something better rather than simply creating faster in our sleep. And just sit with that vision. Because the coming AI revolution is not waiting for our readiness. It is already here. That means the clock is ticking. It's time to grow up, take responsibility, expand our consciousness, and allow ourselves to process the shadows that we have chosen to ignore. This future that we're creating will not be decided by technology. It will be decided by the level of consciousness that we bring to what we create. Extraction begins the moment we forget that we are connected, and regeneration begins the moment that we remember and make one small choice. That remembering is the most radical act available to us right now, and it is, in the end, the only freedom that cannot be made invisible. Which reality do you want to continue feeding? What is one small thing that you can do today to begin weaving the reality you want to experience? Evolution or extraction? It's your choice. If the words in this message resonated with you and you want to be part of the solution, and you know that part of your purpose is to be on this wave of awakening that uses technology in a conscious way, then my private mentorship, The Access Point, is definitely for you. Inside of this mentorship, we explore all the things related to power, God, consciousness, sexuality, and money as juncture points in your own awakening and your own spiritual and ethical point of view. Inside of The Access Point, we can explore what is your anchor to all of this. Go ahead and submit your application.